Hey channel, Fernando from SkyFi Audio. Today I'm going to unbox a brand new Thorens TD1601 turntable in the middle of a thunderstorm nevertheless, so pardon the lightning strikes. This just arrived to us from Thorens. It's 1601 is the model number. Ordered this for a client who is looking to update an older Thorens. This one's finished in the high gloss black. Haven't seen this machine yet. I think it's priced around $5 or $6 grand. And yeah, let's get to it. Let's crack it open and see what it's like. I suspect this is our dust cover. We'll go back to that in a bit. Thorens stroboscope disc. This will help us dial in the speed later. And the typical Thorens thick rubber mat. Great addition. Great packaging. Hopefully there are instructions in the manual on how to repackage it. That's one of the things we struggle with the most in some of the turntable packaging is it's fairly complex at times. So getting it back in the box for safe transport is often a challenge. Macintosh has always been great about giving packing directions in their manuals, and hopefully Thorens did the same thing. Otherwise you can waste quite a bit of time trying to figure that out. So here's the manual, multi-language bit. Don't see anything about packaging, but at least we've got this video to refer back to in case we need to pack it back up. So one of the reasons we're unpacking it is this client is unsure of what cartridge he's going to want to use with it. So as we do with many of our clients, we told them we would try a few choices, some of our top choices, to see what is a really good compliance to go with this tone arm. Here we've got the power supply. I'll open this up later. So it's a nice hefty power supply, the removable IEC power cord, which is nice. That means you can kind of try out different power cords yourself and you're into that. Looks like it runs on plus minus 16 volts DC with a nice DIN connector on it. So I'm not sure it's a switch power supply. No, I see a toroidal transformer in there, so it's a high quality, and it's switchable from between 115 and 220 volts, which you don't find a lot nowadays, and it's a real shame. A lot of our clients are international, so having a switchable power supply is a great addition. All right. Next we've got the IEC power cord. Interestingly enough, I only see the US version of the power cord, so maybe there's a different part number for the European. I've got the umbilical cord, and a counterweight, and the hinges. Nice that they don't ship the hinges in place because they do usually break. And last but not least, we've got the belt. Looks like a common size and width, which is nice. All right. At the bottom, got the 3345 adapter, and finally the platter. So far, great packing, great carton. Looks like a double ply cardboard on both inner and outer boxes. So that'll make sure that this travels safely around the world. Alright, so protective fabric. Slip it out carefully, make sure we don't damage the tone arm. Okay. And a little bit more protection. This seems to be nice aluminum subplatter. Looks very much like one found in an Lin LP12. And then we've got cable tie securing subplatter to the transport screws. I imagine we'll be able to unthread that. Sure enough. There we go. So pretty striking. As mentioned before, it's a gloss black. Nice Thorens embossed logo on the left. Let's remove the transport screws. Set them aside. And yep, here we go. So you see it's a fully suspended turntable, much like a Lin LP12, where the arm board and the motor, the subplatter housing is all bound together. So if you push down on it, it acts as one unit, and it's sprung probably from 3 or 4 different places underneath the table. So it's really hanging upside down from the top plinth, which is a tried and true design. Very common in vintage turntables from the 80s and 70s. Some of the earlier, or in the Thorens, some of the TD-125, 126, Lin LP12 all had this sort of design, which is great. Motors up front, which is unusual. We usually see the motors in the back. Not sure what the design intent was on that. The subplatter is fairly well in there. It doesn't look like it comes out easily, so it's some sort of captive bearing in it. And the pulleys obviously only has one groove on it because the speed control is going to be set through the push buttons in the front. So let's put the belt on. And then we'll check a few things. Maybe we'll test the speed on it. I don't recognize the tone arm. Must be made by them. Not quite sure. The belt is branded by Thorens, and it's sitting a little high on the motor because we don't have any pressure on the subplatter yet. So don't be tricked into thinking that you've got it incorrect or that there's something wrong with it. It's naturally going to sit a little high on the motor until we get it spinning. So I'm just going to drop it by hand for now, and then put the platter on. So the platter appears to be made out of machined aluminum, really high quality, anodized clear, and it's got it's been balanced at the factory, so these holes here are probably balancing holes where they take away material to get it to balance properly, or maybe just, since they are pretty symmetrical, it might just be a machining holding place. Again, reminiscent of the LP12, the way the subplatter and the platter goes together. And looks like it came pretty well factory tuned. You can kind of see the arm board is at a nice height. It's even front to back. The spacing is pretty straight. This sort of spacing between the arm board and the top plinth is pretty accurate, and so are the sides, which is nice. That they were able to transport the machine with the suspension dialed in So I suspect we're not going to have to do much else beyond that. The counterweight is what we like to see. It has gradations on it and a slip ring, so you can zero out the torn arm. Gradations go from 0 to 2.5, actually to 3. So that makes it really nice and easy to dial in your tracking force without having to, in case you don't have access to a digital scale. Torn arm is secured by another plastic metal tie. And it's a nice touch. They put plastic also protecting the surface of the tone arm, which is again aluminum anodized, from getting sort of worn against the holder. So that's that. Okay. This is great. It looks like the head shell is removable. Not the head shell, but essentially the mounting bracket for the tone arm. Let me grab that and give you a little bit of a close-up. All right, so the lower part of the cartridge mount is removable, which is really nice. It allows you to sort of take this piece off and then work on the cartridge mounting at a sort of more comfortable level. It's often tricky to mount a cartridge to a tone arm that has the potential of sliding out and banging into the record surface. So I love the fact that you can remove it, as I will in a minute, and work on it on your workbench or somewhere a little bit more comfortably, and then just attach it with a single screw. Got a piece of tape here holding the leads together. Go ahead and remove that. I'm going to do that off camera so I have both hands accessible. I'm not sure what that is. I'm going to have to look into that as well. Okay, so here we have the anti-skating. I imagine the gradations there are also to match the tracking force. The counterweight is rotational, so you can just adjust it by rotating it. So nice metal finish on most of the parts. This holder is a little disappointing. I'm sure this is susceptible to breaking if you're not careful. I've had pretty bad luck with plastic tone arm holders over the years. This one seems a little flexible, which is nice. It'll give a tiny bit before it snaps. So that's a nice touch. They chose their plastics carefully. But the sub-assembly here is made out of plastic. I guess that's expected at this price level. Setting the height is probably done by rotating this ring here, which is great. And not much else to it. Now this is an auto lift turntable, so we do have a lift button here. That's why we're missing the lifting arm on the tone arm, which is great if you got shaky hands or not very experienced at safely moving tone arms. So I welcome the lift, especially if it'll lift at the end of a record. Let's take a look at the back. Wow. Great assortment here. Single-ended and balanced outputs. That's a really nice feature. Some of the higher-end phono preamps used balanced connections, and cartridges are, in fact, by design, a balanced devices. So it's nice to be able to carry that all the way to the preamp, meaning we've got separate grounds for both left and right channels. So that's kind of neat. The screw-on grounding connectors here, and then we've got fine adjustments for the 33 and 45 and the input for the power supply. So pretty simple plastic hinge covers. I'm going to set this here for a second while I plug it in. So the power cord's about 1 meter long, so keep that in mind if you're ordering one of these. It's a bit on the short side. If you're going to get a custom power cord, you might want to go to 1.5 meters or 2 meters. So DIN connectors sort of require a bit of care to insert. You kind of have to find the way they're keyed first. There's usually a little groove on top. So before you even turn anything, you've got to make sure you're fully inserted, and then you can do the secure ring on it. It's easy to cross thread on a DIN connector, so do that with care. All right, I think we're ready to fire up. Let's get this turned around so you can see a bit better. Okay. So there's a power switch on the back of the power supply, but no LED indication on the power supply that it's got power. Pushing the 33 brings it up to speed. So let's see and test the auto return feature. I doubt that was it, but I hadn't lowered it. So we're going to wait for the testing until we've got a cartridge in place with a proper balance. Right now I'm more interested in setting the speed, or at least confirming that we've got a decent response on the speed. So one of my favorite apps is the RPM app, available on an iPhone. It's called RPM Pro. So you can lock it and then drop it on top of your platter, and it'll report back the speed pretty accurately. So it's warming up, overshot the 33, so now it's at 33.7, but luckily we've got screws in the back in order to dial it in. Sorry if this is making you dizzy, but if I find in the back, now I wouldn't recommend this doing initially. You might want to let it settle in for a while, let it run for an hour or two before you start messing with the speeds. But I can turn down the 33 potentiometer, and it's pretty nice. It's not too sensitive. As you can see, I've dialed it into I'm at 0.04% error, which is really nice. So 33.32, I think I'll leave it at that, call that success, with only a 0.02% error, which is really nice. Great performance. Speed up to 45. 38, 39, 40, 41. No big deal, usually still loading a record by the time it reaches speed. And once again, it's overshot. It's at 45.5. So a quick grab of the screwdriver and the 45 adjuster would turn it down a bit. And then wait for this to display to go green on the, see, I'm at 45.0. I went too low. I'm at 44.7. So it takes a few minutes to get this dialed in, but I suspect once we're there, we don't really have to mess with it much. All right. because I'm at 4502. So that is within 0.001%. So really nice performance from this turntable right out of the box. All right, so here's a close-up of the power supply. The tone arm and the tone arm leads. Nice Thorens traditional mat. It's got a nice heft to it. Okay. So the strobe record is fairly useful. Not as good as the app. This one relies on the frequency of your overhead lighting. So for this to display property, you can't be using LED lighting. You've got to be using the fluorescent or incandescent lighting, because the frequency generated by the electric grid at 60 hertz here in the US is necessary for this for your eye to pick it up. For the persistence of vision to work properly, the light source has to be vibrating at the exact same frequency. So if you can't get the strobe disc working, it's probably you're under the incorrect kind of lighting. You also can't use sunlight. Sunlight is steady, has no frequency, or at least no visible frequency. So don't go too crazy using that. And then taking a closer look at the manual. Let me get to the English section. Okay, so a few things. The lift button is going to turn between red and green to indicate whether it's up or down. Nice little touch. And here it illustrates that the model TD-1600 has manual lift mechanism, while the 1601, which is what we've got here, is a automatic lift on it. All right, the auto shut off, it says when the electronic detects the end of the record, the lift is released, the arm raised, and the motor shuts off. So essentially, as the tone arm reaches its end of record, it'll lift and shut off. It's not going to return automatically, which is perfect. We really don't want a mechanism messing around with the rotation of the tone arm. We essentially just want to do the minimum, which is to lift the tone arm to the lifter. That is common on all turntables. So really the best of both worlds. A bit of automatic, but not too much. All right, here's the mention of adjusting the playback speed up to 6%, plus minus 6%. Overhang on the turntable is 17.8 millimeters, 11 gram effective mass. Let's see what that ring is on the tone arm. I saw something before. Here it is. It's a damping ring in the middle of a tone arm tube, must not be moved. It's a resonant dampener which is only effective at this position. All right. So there is the dampener affecting its effective mass. Okay. Cartridge. Yeah, not much else to it. The hinges are pretty easy to install. I'm not going to bore you with that part. And that's it. Not much else to it. So pretty simple. I think we got it up and running in just about 15 to 20 minutes. Obviously, I haven't mounted the cartridge. That would probably take, at least here, the way we calibrate and mount cartridges, it's probably a few hours between testing and listening and adjusting the rake angle and azimuth and all that other stuff. So we'll be doing that next, and I'll report back to see what we found will work well with this tone arm. Here's the bit I was telling you about, how it's removable. So pretty sweet. Nice. Not quite sure what this gold pin is on the end of it. Must be the grounding wire. Do we have 5 wires here? Yes. So the black wire in this case is going to get grounded to the gold pin on this cartridge holder. So the red, green, blue, and white go to the cartridge, and the black goes to the cartridge holder for ground. All right, that's it for today. Thorens 1601 or TD1601, another great piece from Thorens, well built, nice and sturdy, separate power supply we love to see, great suspension system, and a very simple to use yet effective lift mechanism. Okay, just completed installation and calibration of the Sumiko on this Thorens turntable. The client went with a Sumiko Starling low output moving coil cartridge. We've had great results with this particular piece. It's about $1,800 and a good price to performance match for this Thorens turntable. Has a tracking force of medium tracking force of 2 grams. And again, it's a low output moving coil. He's got a really good phono stage on his rig, so it should do a great job with it. Mounting and calibration was pretty straightforward. There are not that many adjustments on this tone arm, and it keeps it nice and simple. You can essentially set your height of the tone arm, which gives you a parallel surface to the record. Set tracking force. You can set the anti-skate and the distance between the pivot to the stylus. Not much more. That particular distance is adjusted by loosening the screw and moving the cartridge forward and back. So the first thing I did, here's our assortment of calibration tools. This is, let me stand back so you can see, this is our calibration rig. It's essentially a stand purposefully designed and built for calibrating turntables with just everything I need right in hand, which is great, including a nice swiveling platform, a drawer with all our tools, oscilloscope, a sound technology analyzer, and then a reference. Oh, there's the fiscometer that we use, and then we've got some speakers and small near-field monitors in order to hear the results from calibration. So tools of choice, first and foremost, are Dr. Fikert protractor. This allows us to essentially set the distance between, well, if we were mounting a tone arm, this would have allowed us, using the gradations here, to figure out where to mount the tone arm, but since this already came, we used the Fikert to essentially determine the length or where the stylus should be touching. So pretty straightforward. After that, we set our height of the arm, and for that we use this, it's pretty simple. You kind of have to eyeball it. There's no great way to do it, so we use a clear acrylic indicator to essentially, we'll put the arm on our record surface, then we'll put this, and we'll do a visual sort of check to see if the lines are parallel, to make sure the tone arm is not leaning one way or the other. And as I mentioned before, that adjustment is here, this sort of knurled nut here at the bottom of the tone arm. Then we set the tracking force using a fairly precise digital scale with a 0.01 gram resolution. We set it to 2.0. And finally, we set our anti-skate. Anti-skate, you could follow the builder's recommendations for the tone arm, or you can kind of utilize what we do is we take this great test record from Hi-Fi News, and there are certain tracks on there that allows us to play a signal and then see it on the scope and assess which channel is getting more distortion and adjust the anti-skate accordingly. So we're able to kind of balance out what the optimum is. And then we play some records to essentially just sort of here are the results of our endeavors. So I'll show you some of the operation here. The height is set pretty well, 33. Selection will get the record spinning. And then a push of that, you can hear the motor engage and drop the tone arm into place. So overall pretty successful. It's got great channel separation, little distortion, and overall a solid performer. So that's it. This is going to a new home. If you'd like to know more about us or our store, please visit skyfiaudio.com and subscribe to our channel if you like the videos. Thanks again.